have to record this. All set? Okay, again, good evening. My name is David Steinberg, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded and a sign-in sheet is on the table over on the side. Please be sure to sign in for our records and so that if necessary, we can contact you in the future regarding the item that you are here for. This public hearing is to consider one item. This item is about tree removal replacement and tree planting application. This is order number 201124 to consider the removal of 52 street trees with replacement along 24th Street between Potrero Avenue and Mission Street adjacent to the locations that were listed on the agenda. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing items, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations on today's hearing items. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will be forwarding the findings from this hearing and make recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them. Therefore, if you want to be notified, again, please sign in and give us your contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for this item. I will first ask the Department's Urban Forestry Unit to make a brief presentation. The Urban Forester will give a brief summary of the application and will have up to 5 minutes to present the item. Where the Department has approved the application and received protests, which is the case here, I will have the protesters speak next, and then I will allow the Department to speak again to address any concerns. In some cases, if there are mixed appeals, meaning the Department has approved some removals but denied others, that's not the case here. We can go forward. Comments should be addressed to me and not to the Department. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me or the clerk. By the end of this hearing, it will be considered. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it will mean that the speaker has 30 seconds left to speak. A louder second bell will signal that the time is up. If you're speaking in general about the permits, I would ask you only to speak once, and we'll allow each person to have one say. After public comments are completed, I'll close the item. So we'll now begin the hearing. Again, this is order number 201124. May I have the Department make its presentation first?
Good evening, Chris Buck with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This evening, because we only have one item, typically we have 7 to 8 individual permits or cases to review. So the staff presentation will be a little longer. But we want to do 2 things this evening. We want to provide as much information as we can to the public. And also, more importantly, we also want to sit back and listen to the testimony provided this evening, taking close notes and listening to the feedback. So Public Works has a strategic plan, and goal 1 is to ensure a safe, clean, and green infrastructure and public rights-of-way. Proposition E passed on November 8th, 2015. It was probably the only good thing that happened that night on November 8th. But the party to celebrate the city's maintenance responsibility for all street trees was cut short due to other political factors that evening. So Proposition E, there's a different proposition every year. So now we refer to it as Street Tree SF, which is the implementation of the city assuming responsibility for all the street trees. We had a street tree census completed a couple of years ago as part of our overall urban forest plan. And the goal is to prune every tree in a 3 to 5 year pruning cycle. However, the first couple of years, we're really trying to address the worst first as we roll out and implement maintaining all of the street trees. We've have a full-time public information officer who's able to help us out with the effort on 24th Street and provide a lot more materials than we typically have in the past. And since the start of Street Tree SF, 26% of total tree maintenance needs have been addressed by contractors and city arborists. More than 33,000 trees have been pruned, and more than 3,000 at-risk trees have been removed. We have information and outreach material, increasingly in physical format, but also online, where we show our key map or our grid maps. One reason for the public's approval of Proposition E for the city to maintain all the street trees is we had the advantage of economy of scale, where we can bring an equipment to a block and prune all the trees collectively that need to be pruned and remove trees when necessary. The only way we're going to do that is if we have an organized key map or grid system. And that's what we've developed based on best management practices that are followed across the country. Some more examples of our outreach, and I'm going to try to thread the needle of moving my presentation along, knowing that we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, but also still taking the time to be respectful about what we're here to talk about tonight. So there are challenges with ficus trees, Ficus microcarpa nitida. It was once a popular street tree, and the reason is they look so green and so healthy all year round. Initial issues that we started seeing maybe 20 years ago was repeated sidewalk damage from the tree roots. The species was removed from our planting list, from the city's planting list and Friends of the Urban Forest planting list by the mid-1990s. That didn't mean they had to be removed. It was just, we're seeing issues with this species. But we have seen in the last 5 to 7 years increasing amount of large stem failures. And so now we're looking at public safety concerns, which include blocked roads, property damage, and injuries. We've created a director's order 183151 called the tree removal criteria for ficus trees. Typically, the Bureau of Urban Forestry has had a pretty high standard for when we allow a street tree to be removed. And our general approach is if a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, we would deny a request to remove such a tree. The director's order acknowledges the benefits and value of ficus trees and outlines in detail the structural defects that are leading to the large stem failures within this species. The primary issue is the codominant stems with narrow angles of attachment with or without included bark. This is where trees are failing within trees themselves. So it's a physiological issue, and the greenness of the canopy has no bearing on the failure of the stem. And so this is a typical example of a ficus with very poor structure. Down low, there are 2 main stems, and when we say competing trunks or competing stems, you see there's one trunk that divides into 2. There's a very narrow seam separating both stems. Both of those stems are growing as if they are a single trunk, and they're actually growing apart and away from each other. And over time, they actually split apart. A little higher up is an injury with some decay, not the end of the world. But above that, we have, again, the stem divides into 3 secondary branches, and all 3 of these are the same size, competing with each other. This was a topping cut. Someone made a stub cut here years ago, and the resulting growth has really poor structure and is prone to fail. I have some general images of how ficus trees fail. So again, we have a single trunk, divides into 4 to 5 different competing stems, and no surprise, after a while, it actually starts splitting apart. This is what one looks like when it's started to split apart, but is yet to fall apart. So one thing to understand is that the stems that are failing are typically, the wood is sound. There's no decay here. The brown dark spot is the included bark being forced out between the stems of the 2 leaders. We've had failures across the city, Oak and Fell, Lombard, Hyde, 24th Street, Potrero Avenue, individual ficus trees on side streets across the city. This is on Otis. This was late last year on Hayes. Often what may occur in a commercial district is that ficus trees with poor structure, if they also lack clearance over the road, we require 14 feet of clearance directly over a road and prune trees to achieve that. Sometimes trucks, even though they're trying to avoid trees, make contact with them. And in this case, it brought down a ficus stem on Hayes Street in Hayes Valley. One thing just to point out is this is not a conspiracy limited to the Mission. This is citywide, it's national, it's international, and some species do better with included bark. So this is just a generic image from Middle America, just showing, again, a large tree that's split apart due to codominant stems and included bark. So it's something as an arborist that as you go from city to city or state to state, those skills you can bring with you. So regarding citywide ficus removals, here's a number of streets and areas where we've been undergoing a lot of tree removal of ficus trees. Fillmore Street, Oak and Fell, 16th and Church, Columbus Avenue, and Hayes Valley. We've got more information on our website about ficus trees and the challenges we have in maintaining them. More information and public outreach. It's a little difficult to read all this, but just showing you some of the materials that we have. So Lower 24th Street has experienced a number of stem failures. We've been asked for data on that, and so we did a deep dive into the tree failures reports that we have, and there were 41 branch failures in the last 10 years. That's a pretty lengthy time frame, but people asked us for statistics, and that's the best we can show here. Obviously, 24th Street is a dense, very busy urban environment. We have examples of failures that have occurred on 24th, but again, the earlier images I showed were citywide. This ficus split apart by Mission Girls. I'm always reluctant to show these images because it just feels like, scare the audience. Let's show nasty things. But we've actually had people say to us, I didn't know there's a ficus issue in the city, and that's totally understandable. But if you go online and you Google San Francisco ficus tree, in the last 10 years, there's just been article after article about the number of ficus trees that are splitting and failing in San Francisco. This one had a root failure earlier this year. And so additional issues, one of the reasons that ficus did become a less favored species is, again, the damage to the sidewalk. But it's a very large stature tree to have. We're doing better with trees on Dolores, where we have a super wide sidewalk. But pruning for building clearance has caused imbalances. We have a narrow sidewalk. This is at Joe DiMaggio Playground, just to give you a sense of how wide ficus trees would grow if given the space. Now, all the ficus trees have been removed over the last 5 to 8 years along this Lombard Street, along Joe DiMaggio Playground. Again, looks good on this side, but on the other side, half the tree is split off, and we had to put an emergency removal notice on this tree. Regarding Lower 24th Street, we've had a couple of meetings. When we're posting one tree for removal, we put a notice up on the trunk in the 4 corners of the block. Obviously, if we're endeavoring to remove originally 70-plus trees, we realize you don't just roll that out in the public. So we reached out to the supervisor's office and the community to set up community meetings so we could start talking about our concerns well in advance of posting the removal notices. This details a number of the steps that we've taken to perform outreach. Most critical thing we want to do is just educate the public and explain what we're doing and why we're doing. Again, here's a listing of the steps we've taken, but for time, I'm going to move on, and we'll make this available after the hearing. So there have been various ways that people have been informed about the meetings, and we've been providing materials at the actual meetings. One of the meetings actually involved a walk around where we tried to get out on 24th Street and look at the trees themselves physically to really talk about the structure of the trees. And we have a spreadsheet that details the recommendations for each tree along the corridor. We did mail letters to property owners along the corridor to let them know about the proposed removals, particularly if a tree was not replantable in front of their property. Our code, the Urban Forestry Ordinance, requires that when a tree be removed, that it be replaced. And so whenever there's a tree that's removed, it's not a feel-good thing, it's a requirement. It's an environmental requirement. And most trees can be replanted in front of a home, but some cannot due to a number of utility conflicts. We have a 13-page listing of all the guidelines that we need to adhere to when we're planting a tree. Now, if there's one or two we have to fudge or turn a blind eye to, we will, and it even says, if there's a couple of these things here that you can live with, you should decide on planting replacement, not replanting replacement. So it errs on the side of planting. So our initial assessment identified 77 ficus trees or street trees in the area for removal. We were asked repeatedly to return by the community to see if any trees could be phased or pruned more aggressively and as a result retained. Review of trees proposed for removal resulted in 25 now proposed to be retained, both experimental or aggressive pruning in an attempt to mitigate safety concerns. So 52 trees are still proposed for removal due to the immediate safety hazard they pose. These are the posting notices that we put up to announce the upcoming meeting, the tree hearing that we're at this evening. Regarding the aggressive pruning, this is not a practice that we even want to see occur in the city, which is why it wasn't in our menu of options for tree management, but it's essentially cutting the trees very severely. Some might call it topping. Typically, this is something we'd issue a fine for when others are doing it. We've never wanted to prune trees in this manner, but the community has asked, well, is there another way that you could manage these trees and retain more of them? This would be the way. We prune the tree in this way. At first, it's going to look very ugly. Within about 6 months, it's going to fill out, and it'll look like a regular tree, albeit with a smaller canopy. And the idea is that we would re-evaluate those trees at our next 3 to 5 year pruning cycle. So we're now proposing to do that at 25, with 25 of the original 77 trees. We're about to wrap up this portion of the presentation where we can actually go into detail about each of the trees. But overall, there's 133 trees along this section of 24th. Ficus to be removed is 51. There's one small dead Brisbane box that brings it up to 52. Total trees remaining would be 82, and then total replacement trees and new plantings would be 68. So at the end of that, the total number of trees would be 150. Now, I'll be the first one to point out that we never feel that just saying that a tree is going to be replaced is adequate. Some people feel that way. We completely understand that a small tree doesn't provide a fraction of the benefits that a large mature tree provides. We absolutely get that. Regarding work phases, I'll try to move through this quickly, but what we've committed to doing is, if approved, we would remove the trees and grind the stumps. The next step that follows is sidewalk repair, because we do need to make sidewalk repairs at a lot of the locations, or we need to shift and move locations further from utilities. Once that's been done, then we can do the replacement tree planting. This just goes through the removal phase just to show folks that we've got a plan and it's organized. There's things we're taking into account, like Carnival, Fiesta de las Americas, any other major event we would work around and not impact. Regarding replacement tree species, we had meetings several years ago, and it was a heated debate, but in the end, red maple, which don't look red most of the year, they look green. Red maple was the species selected for the main blocks, with ginkgos located on the corner at the start and end of each block. We have been planting some replacement trees on 24th already with 36-inch box trees. Most will be 24-inch box size trees. This is an example of a 36-inch box size tree. And we have photos. I went back out today because these are in their deciduous state, so you can't even see them. But this is what, you've probably seen some of these in the last month or two get planted where we had missing tree locations. Some other concerns that have come up when we met with the supervisor's office and the community who's present at that meeting, and then meeting with the community again. A couple of things. One is a challenge and an opportunity. One concern is Christmas lights, stringing up Christmas lights. If we're removing ficus trees, how do we do that? There have been a number of new streetlights installed, so we're looking at working with the community on allowing streetlights to be strung up to other utility poles and the streetlights. Also, there's a desire, we've heard a desire to do something that's a little bit more placemaking. So instead of a standard sort of beige tree stake, doing something like maybe painting tree stakes or having a different design on the cross brace. We're totally open to that. So additional information before we go into the tree-by-tree evaluation. We're committed to a 3-month turnaround from removal to replacement tree for each block. Again, if approved, we still have a lengthy process. This is just the hearing at Public Works. This departmental hearing, any decision that's issued by the director is ultimately appealable to Board of Appeals. But this is what we're committing to. The code requires that we plant replacement trees within 6 months. We've heard citywide, because we do have some funding shortages when it comes to planting trees. We do have funding to plant replacement trees along 24th Street, and so we're committing to a 3-month turnaround. Public Works will also provide bi-weekly project updates to Supervisor Ronen's office and the community while the project is ongoing. We'll have dedicated contact for questions, concerns, and updates. And we'll also provide updates to KIA 24 and be found on visiting our website. Again, this is kind of our framework for when we talk about trees and tree structure. The tree may have green canopy and good vigor, but if the tree has poor structure, it can't sustain itself and they split apart. So moving on, to spare you all, I don't have, I'm not going to do a PowerPoint where I go into every single tree, but I can assure you that we've evaluated every single tree very closely by multiple people. But we're going to highlight a lot of them. But we're also going to try to do this in a timely manner so that we can get the public up here providing their testimony. So this is the format I have, is an address with an image of the structural issue. In this case, there is a large cavity with decay located below 3 main stems. This is a very weak section within the tree and prone to fail. This is the same tree. So one thing I haven't mentioned is on 24th Street in the last several years, we've been seeing a lot of trees decline in health. So now that's typically when we want to remove a tree, is when an evergreen tree suddenly drops half its leaves and lets us know it's essentially tapping out. We don't have that with some of these ficus trees. They're dropping a lot of the canopy, but a lot of them, again, are splitting apart regardless of the decline in vigor. But that tree we're just looking at least 50% of the canopy is died back. This is tree 1 and 2 at 2700 24th Street. Again, the tree should be lush, green, glossy green, like the tree on the right that's poking out of view. And there's another tree at the same site that is in very, very poor condition, let alone the structural concerns that we have. And this is a before. I just wanted to show a before photo. Same block. So as you can see, we've got some decline here. Again, recap, trees regarding replacement trees, we have all that information per site. Some folks have reached out to us, what's happening with my particular address, we'll email them that information. In this case, this is removal of 3 with replacement of 3, but we have to shift 1 tree away from the streetlight pole, so we're reworking the spacing. Here's 2718 to 2734. We propose pruning rather aggressively these 3 ficus and not removing these. So these are 3 trees that were originally proposed for removal that we're going to prune only. The last tree in the row is still proposed for removal. Again, the tree on the far left is proposed for removal due to very poor structure. One of the concerns we have when the community said, go back and see if there's something you can do to keep some of these trees. If they had extensive sidewalk damage or way too close to a streetlight, that made that tree much less a candidate for aggressive pruning, because one thing that's going to happen with the aggressive pruning is the tree will flush out with a flush of growth that many look at and say, hey, that looks like really healthy. But it's really a stress response because the tree has to put out leaves to photosynthesize. If it's doing that right next to a streetlight, we have no chance of keeping, allowing that streetlight to actually reach the street. This is the end of the block by Potrero Avenue, just showing that the last tree in the block is now showing significant signs of decline. But we approved both of these based on their poor structure and the fact that they're planted at the base of the foundation. Here's an example of the poor structure at that corner tree with multiple stems and included bark. This tree has very unusual structure. This is where we're seeing the failure points within the ficus, is where these main stems join. So this is a typical street tree along 24th Street with a number of points of codominance with included bark. I didn't do this to every tree, but trees that we said, oh, you know what, we've evaluated this tree, it has wider angles of attachment, we can work with this tree, it's less likely to fail. Those are trees that we're going to retain. But trees like this that have a lot of codominant stems, those stems can be large down low, or they can be even smaller high up in the canopy. Going over towards Brava Theater, we are proposing to prune a couple of the trees and remove the one on the far right. It has a large injury at the main stem. So again, what we're doing as arborists is we're evaluating the trees one by one. I headed into it knowing like there's going to be some serious issues here. There's no set number. Someone asked me offline, like, come on, you know, tell me the director doesn't just have a number in his or her head that you're just trying to aim for. And it's like, I'm an arborist, not a statistician. We're evaluating the trees individually. I will point out that the trees in front of Brava are also starting to show signs of decline. Now, across from Brava Theater, this is going to be heavily impacted, as 3 of the 4 trees across the street we are proposing to remove, whereas there's 1 tree that we're proposing to prune. These both have poor structure and very poor vigor. Pops, this tree has really hung in there a long time. It's a survivor, but it's had a number of impacts. It has poor structure, codominant stems. That is a street light pole right next to it. And tree advocates, we like to feel like we're pretty powerful, but ADA advocates kind of trump us. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do a whole lot. There actually weren't a lot of roots on this side of the tree. But this tree, combined with the structural problems, we felt was no longer sustainable. Again, if we were to cut this tree back, it's going to completely engulf the street light. It's going to be untenable. The 2804 24th Street is a removal. It has extensive sidewalk damage and codominant stems and injuries on the main stems over the road. 2809, this is an example of a tree that we feel that we can work with. It was originally proposed for removal. It's one of the 25 that we've said, okay, we will prune it. We'll prune it more than we typically recommend, but it'll allow there to be canopy on the block. At 2839 to 2847 24th, this tree already had a split out in the center of its canopy. It wasn't a main stem, but it was a large secondary stem. So this tree is no longer sustainable, not a candidate for even heavy pruning, so we're proposing to remove this tree. 2824 to 2838 24th Street, these 3 ficus trees are proposed for removal, not heavy pruning. They have very poor structure. Some of them have bad sidewalk damage. Here's more trees in decline. So on the 2900 block, several of these trees are 50% or less live canopy. So we've seen a lot of dieback within that. And I would say 10 years ago is when I started to see, before 2010, I was the education coordinator for 5 years for Friends of the Urban Forest and then worked for the city. I'd never seen a dead ficus tree or even a ficus in decline. It's just something you never see. And roughly around the late 2000s, 2010, we just started seeing a lot of dieback in the ficus trees. This tree on the left is at 2889. We already showed a photo of this, but it failed early in the morning, and when it failed, it also damaged the tree across the street. This is what it looked like when it failed. But again, showing that sort of uneven pruning that we've had to do over the years. Ficus trees are incredibly tolerant of having root disturbance by root pruning, but there are limits, and we are achieving those limits. You know, for years we've just been repairing sidewalk and pruning roots.
Sorry, could we please move to public comment?
Yeah.
We appreciate all this.
No worries. I'll move it along. Absolutely, absolutely.
Everybody in the other room cannot see this PowerPoint, so everything that you're saying is literally.
Is there a live camera in the other room?
There's the sheriff. I asked the sheriff earlier, and he said it would be on the screen. It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. So I will just move through this. We're pruning these 5 ficus in a row. There was, on the walk around, there was a little bit of, someone thought it was heckling. It wasn't heckling. There was questions about how these trees got removed. One failed, and then it damaged the tree to the left of it. And so then we had to come out and put the removal notice on the tree on the left. But someone was very adamant that we research that for them, which we've done. Again, some of these trees are showing severe signs of decline as we move on to getting closer to Mission Street. This basically concludes the presentation. We are retaining the tree right at the corner of Mission. The branching has wider points of attachment. And so this is typically how we want to prune a ficus tree. Prune in the branch ends, bring it in a little bit, do some thinning. For ficus trees that have good structure, that's typically adequate. That's not been adequate on the rest of the trees that we've been showing you. So I did want to show an example of, like, yes, we can work with trees that have structure that's worth risking. But we've been doing this to the ficus trees, and they still have been failing. So I do want to thank folks for being patient this evening, and we're going to turn it over to public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we obviously have a lot of people who are interested and want to speak. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, and the clerk will ring the bell when you have 30 seconds, and then at the conclusion. Keep in mind that at the end, I'll allow the department to speak once again. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak will get a chance to speak, but if you do speak, it's one and done, so use your time wisely. So do we have? Do we have a list, or? No? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, we'll start hearing public comments. So if we want to have, why don't we have you stand in a line, get about 5 people at a time, so you're not standing up forever, but just where the gentleman with the green is, so the rest you want to wait for a little bit, and then you can come up as we go through people. Yeah. So let's, if that's enough standing for the moment, because we don't want to have the sheriff come back in and send people across the room. So as people speak, we can bring more folks up. So, sir, do you want to, I guess you're first, so.
Hi, my name is Linda Lagunas, and I'm a 25-year Mission resident. I would just like to say I feel that our community has really been under siege. And I feel like 24th Street is the heart of our community. And to go in and aggressively take out so many of these trees feels violent. Like, it feels like a violation of our community. I also feel like if trees have to come out, and there are some that I see that are, missing foliage, a staggered and measured approach to that could be acceptable. But I think pulling out that many trees is just aggressive, and it needs to be measured.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Nolte. The overhead, please. This is a picture of the Call 24th Street Cultural District. My name is John Nolte. I'm the co-chair of San Francisco Tree Campaign, and I have 2 online petitions. One online from change.org has 3,520 signatures, and the second one, because people were having problems with the signing in, has 42 as of today. I'm handing in public comment on the change.org of 205 people on the petition that have written on the petition of change.org, which started in July of 2018 when we started to deal with the main library. And since then, it's changed the focus of the petitions to ficus trees because apparently they seem to be the main focus of the Bureau of Forestry and removing of trees. And I also want to note that the hearing officer, are you taking any notes? I mean, we have these people waited over an hour. I've taken notes, and I think it's important that the hearing officer take notes because you're going to be making a decision. BRF has chose to go after the 7,000 ficus trees in San Francisco. In the hearing that we had 2 weeks ago, when we heard from Hayes Valley, the Friends of Urban Forest executive director said that 2,000 of those 5,000 trees will be removed. So this is just the beginning. Then the next thing is, today is the largest request of ficus trees to be removed, and the community is very concerned when we decided to replace the replacement tree, the size, the trimming of the trees on 24th Street. We asked that the hearing officer to understand how these many trees would impact the Call 24 Latino Cultural District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dang. My name is Marie Sorensen. I'm with Calle 24. The problem with dealing with the city is we have the city come to our council and say they want our help, and then they proceed to tell us what to do. This is the way it is with MTA, DPW, other departments. We really don't have a say in any of this. It's a done deal. I understand wanting to take trees out when the sewers are impacted. That's legitimate. On the tour, one of the people said, well, you know, the trees were left in the care of the building owners for, I don't know how much time they were left. And that's why they've gotten out of control. Well, you know, let's halt there. The city hadn't pruned them for I don't know how long, and when they did prune them, it was sporadically every, I don't know, million years. And one of the big things that what's happening to 24th Street is we're trying to save it, and the city's trying to gentrify it. So I wish they'd be much more judicious in what trees are going to come out. And the fact of the matter is they don't have enough trees to replace what's going to come out. So, okay, so we're going to have barren streets. Thanks a lot.
Can I zoom out? Sorry, just want to show this. This is not very.
I can work on the
Thank
shot.
you. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kendra Sherrick. I'm a long-term resident of the Mission. When I found out about the removal of essentially all of the trees between Mission Street and Potrero, I was outraged. This is actually what most of 24th Street looks like. These trees provide shade for our homes. They provide air and breeze and beautiful things that make the street tolerable. Several months ago, 2 trees on my block were removed, on the corner of Shotwell and on the corner of South Van Ness, right above Wise Sons Deli. Right above Wise Sons Deli. This now is the direct sunlight that is on all day on Wise Sons Deli. And this is what the entire street will look like if these trees are removed. But it's not only about our shade and global warming and all of and this mission being under siege. How can this city proclaim to be any kind of progressive city when Nature Conservancy, Discover Magazine, Science Daily have all published headlines within the last 6 months? Concrete jungles. Cities are deploying millions of trees in the fight against climate change. Discover Magazine, how a massive tree planting campaign eased stifling summer heat. That was in New York City. Science Daily, trees are crucial to the future of our cities. This is just an outrageous thing, and there's so little in this city these days that makes me feel empowered, I have to say. I would like it if the same attention would be put to cleaning the streets, to getting, dung, human dung off so I don't have to step on it when I walk out my front door, rather than taking the one thing that makes me feel quite joyful about 24th Street.
Well said indeed. My name's Donald Simon. I'm a longtime resident of the Mission, and every workday I go up and down 24th twice a day. I'm sure there are instances where trees have fallen, but I've not seen them. And so what we heard today in a very good presentation that I do appreciate, I don't think anybody here thinks that there's no situations when a tree needs to be removed. But what it sounds like we have is an emergency. But that is betrayed by the fact that we've had very limited incidents. And so one of the things that I think a lot of us would like to see is the database that the city can share with us that shows us the individual problems that they analyze for each tree so that we can understand why they believe that tree needs to go. But what's being proposed here is an evisceration of the one defining characteristic of 24th Street, that when I moved here in 1997, that was the thing this neighborhood was known for. Now you take that away, it's inconsistent with all the values this city has proclaimed for so many years around climate change, because large trees sequester more carbon than new trees, urban heat island effect, because when you get rid of those trees, as we saw, you're gonna have the sun blazing on everything. And so a question that I would have is, number one, can we get the database that the city has put together that has their data for each tree so we can analyze it for ourselves? Number two, what analysis has been done under the California Environmental Quality Act to fulfill the city's legal responsibilities to analyze and present to the public the environmental implications of what they're proposing, the alternatives, as well as the no action alternative, which is required by CEQA. And finally, I want you to take notice of the fact that we've got the Warriors playing in a national championship game right now. Yet you have all these people who waited a half hour while this hearing was slated to begin. I don't know why it was delayed, but I'm sure there's a good reason. However, that needs to be communicated to the director. We're up in arms over this. And I don't think we're saying do nothing, but we're saying this is an extreme measure that is not supported by the facts on the ground, because these trees, competing branches, competing stems, loss in the canopy, whatever, they've been there for a long, long time, and they're not failing at the pace that one would expect from the emergency circumstances that were described. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kayla, and I'm really happy to be here, and I see a lot of familiar faces. I'm a recent SFSU graduate in environmental studies, more specifically sustainability and social justice. I'm also a Mission resident, and my family has been in the neighborhood since the 60s. I want to discuss the dangers of tree removal with the scientific and climate focus, as well as an environmental and social justice perspective. I am against the removal of our trees along 24th Street because we are currently experiencing a climate emergency. Climate change affects people differently. Temperature change affects people differently. It is both a structural and emotional experience. When we remove trees in a neighborhood like the Mission, we remove the long-term protection from climate change. We lose ecosystem services like animal habitat, shade, natural barrier from street and sidewalk, natural air filtration, aesthetic, culture, and connection to the land. And what bothers me the most is that there is a notion to remove trees without replacement, and this is problematic. Declining ficus trees is a sign of drought. Branches and root systems begin to fail because of the dryness, and we need to address that. We need to think about ways to treat the symptoms of climate change. We need to think about options to irrigate and maintain the trees. Less trees will expose impervious streets, which will result of more heat reflection and increasing temperature. The asphalt, I have about a minute. The asphalt traps about 90% of the sun's heat, and at nighttime the heat will release, so we have more heat the following day. San Francisco will become an urban heat island, similar to Los Angeles, where there's 60 to 70 heat-related deaths per summer. We need to start thinking critically about our actions and who it affects and who is affected the most. And we need to prevent these problems before they exist. Climate change is the single greatest crisis of our time. It is evident that we are experiencing temperature change. Increasing summer temperatures in SF are a hazard to people who work outdoors, elders, pets, and especially homeless. Excessive heat increases chances for hospitalization, and San Francisco is not equipped with social or technical infrastructures to support this outcome. Many of us do not own air conditioning, and if we do, then it says a lot about what kind of city San Francisco has become and who does and does not get protected. SF Public Works has $5.6 billion invested in active projects, and it fails to include the voices of community members.
Thank you.
Hey, I came because I was bummed that the trees were going to get cut down like everybody. But seeing what this arborist was talking about kind of changed my mind in the way that I see it's a species-specific problem. Like, it's super important to have these trees that are going to keep, humidity in and keep the heat off. But I think that replacing them with species that are going to do better over time is a legitimate thing. So as long as we can hold the city accountable to replace these, they'll continue to serve the function that they're serving right now. It's going to be a big bummer to have the foliage just drop. But if these new trees come in, get bigger, and continue providing the same services these trees are doing now, I think it's worth it. Because I've seen live ficus trees, like real ficus trees growing out in Asia. They don't look like the ones that we have. So seeing how an arborist is pointing out that these fail points and that 41 have dropped in 10 years, I can understand why we'd choose a new species. So I think it's just really important that we don't lose any trees. It's more about choose the right species that are going to work in tandem with us. Choose the species that are going to work the way that we want them to. Grow up straight, grow up strong, grow up deep, rather than spreading out. Ficus have huge buttress roots. So, species specific, man. That's what I got out of it.
Thank you.
My name is Dan Matarosi. I live at 2700 22nd Street. I've been there for 20 years. I really appreciate the beauty of 24th Street and the beauty that the ficus trees present. I hear the scientific argument. I don't want to make a scientific argument. What I would like to point out is that the city has something like a $10 billion budget. That's with a B. And we have the most pathetic tree canopy of any major city in America. That's not bull. That's the truth. I'm also worried about what happens after these trees are cut down and the maples and the ficus take their place. I noticed in the blurb we get a 4x4 square for each tree. The reason that the roots of these ficus trees have disrupted the sidewalk on 24th Street is that no one has ever watered them, that I can see. I've walked that street for over 20 years. I've never seen anybody water any of those ficus trees. I don't care what kind of species you plant there. I think the arborist would probably agree with this. If you don't water them on a regular basis, they're not going to thrive, particularly young trees. They need 15 gallons of water a week. My question to the city is, who's going to provide that water for these young maple trees and ginkgo trees? One other question I have, why are we planting ginkgo trees? They're beautiful trees. They're the slowest growing deciduous tree that I know. They're also the oldest, by the way. They've been around since the dinosaurs, so they're very adaptable, obviously. But they're not a good choice because they don't grow fast. And what's going to happen on 24th Street is people are going to be shocked when they see the dissolution of this canopy in such a drastic fashion. And the last thing I want to say is, we're the mission. We get the dregs of everything. And a lot of people are here because the trees are just a flashpoint, okay? And if we're really worried about health and safety, tell the criminals at PG&E to underground the wires. Because the next time there's an earthquake, you're going to see damage from from the electric poles that's going to dwarf the problems that these ficus trees are giving us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Susan Cervantes, a Mission resident for over 58 years, and founding director of Presidi's Muralist Association, who own their own building on 24th Street at the 2981. And we've been there for over 20 years, but we're a legacy business over 42 years. As a resident, I protest the proposed removal of the ficus trees, or the ficus, excuse me. People who live and work on 24th Street have signed a petition protesting the removal of the ficus trees, which I give to you today. These ficus trees on 24th Street are our neighborhood greenway, our quality of life asset, the home to many birds and butterfly species. They are our ancestors. They provide abundant clean air on a very polluted corridor. They shade us on very hot days and shelter us from winter storms. Ginkgo and red maple trees are honorable replacement choices, but will not give us the great green canopy we love to come to on 24th Street all year round, and has given us our character on 24th Street, and we love them. We need to preserve the greenness which helps us heal and soothes our spirit. During this very challenging and changing time in our urban environment, change can be good, but not so fast. I agree that some of the ficus trees have issues. Exceptions would be ficus that are in poor health. The branches that are overgrown should be removed. In the past, their roots would be cut back to avoid them growing under adjacent property and uplifting sidewalks. Why doesn't the city continue this practice? The ficus trees are not a threat. More chance that a vehicle on 24th Street will run over you than a ficus tree branch falling on you. Trees are the safest plants in the world. It is a natural force that they should fall, or could be negligent maintenance in an urban environment. Experimental pruning for the 76 trees would be better. These trees exist. Those trees that exist, it seems like they could be cutting down, they should not be cutting down 51 with only 3 replacements, and that's what that notice on the tree said. Over the decades, I've seen this proper care, but there's these 2 trees right in front of the center that are around these what is it? It's a light pole, and they've been pruned back for that light to shine. I would say move the light pole.
Hello, my name is Aya Trenier, and I'm actually from England, the UK, and I'm visiting here on work. And this morning, I was walking down 24th Street with my work colleague, and I was admiring these beautiful, majestic trees, and saying that it was one of the most gorgeous streets that I've seen in San Francisco. And I was admiring all the beautiful foliage and just imagining how many birds must live in those trees and the endangered species and how that must be a home for so much wildlife and how much oxygen that must be for that area. And I was horrified to see the signs on the trees saying that they're all going to be cut down. In my country where I live, there's been a lot of protests because of a thing called 5G, that private companies are being actually paid to cut down canopy trees because as the new 5G network is being laid out, it doesn't actually pass through big canopy trees. So I'm wondering if big tech has something to do with it as well. I'd just like to share that with people here.
Good evening. It's unfortunate that we are here, have to respond to deforestation of 51 trees on 24th Street. This destruction will have a highly negative effect on the neighborhood. If the department is going to decimate the neighborhood, why don't they take a clue from decimate, the word from Latin that represents one elimination for 10%. And that's a strategy that would cover a whole lot of complaints you're hearing tonight, and come back a year or two from now and clean up what needs working. And I have some experience with tree clearances in the city. I once was a member of the Presida Park Tree Committee, and those trees are still there. It took a lot of work, took a supervisor's handy uplift, but the trees in Presida Park are still there, got supplemented by some colorful plums. And the only thing this subject reminds me of is some time ago when the city demolished and redeveloped the Fillmore District. And that did a lot because we don't hear about the Fillmore District anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Louis Rogers. In August will be my 8th year living in the Mission at 23rd in Alabama. I too would like to see a database. And one thing that I want to talk about that hasn't been brought up yet is the effect that this is going to have on our youth and our children growing up in the Mission. One of the last places that you can still raise a family in San Francisco. San Francisco has increasingly become a city for adults, and single families are being pushed out. I grew up in Oregon, and there's a lot of trees there. But growing up in nature had such a huge effect on me, and there are studies that show that when you grow up in a concrete jungle, it's difficult for you. And at a time when Linda said that our neighborhood is under siege, to see 52 trees removed all of a sudden is like a dagger to the heart. And during the presentation, you said that it was a myth that this was just happening to the Mission. I would like to see that myth dispelled because it just doesn't seem like anywhere else is getting a gutting quite like we are.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Connie Rivera. I live in the Mission on 24th Street. I live in Werner on 24. And to hear and knowing that you're going to cut the trees, I'm against and protect that because the trees are the future of the new generations. I have children and I have kids, so it's very sad for me to see that they're gonna cut it. My boy, I have a boy, he was gonna come today, but he changed his mind at the end. He has a very long hair, so for me to cut those trees is cutting my boy's trees, my boy hair. So please, I'm against and protest to cut the trees. So please consider and do something else. So like somebody says here, look which trees are really affecting or want to affect or damage 24th Street, not 52 trees. Please, I'm very sad and to hear that's gonna happen. A lot of community people live out of the city and 24th Street. There's not many families who still live in that already because the cost of living is very high. But now to hear that the trees are gonna be cut is very sad. Don't cut it, please.
Good evening. I'm Ricardo Peña. I'm a resident of 24th Street and also a business owner. I'm living there in more than 30 years, and I'm in protest to not cutting the ficus trees because I believe in life, and this tree is giving life to my kids, to my neighborhood, and to the community. And also, I'm here raising the voice of my Latino community because I can see here in the hall, there's not many Latino community. Mostly, all the times, this information doesn't come to them, maybe because we don't read. But I'm here in representing the Latino community, the Hispanic who lives in the Mission. A lot of people, they didn't show up here because they don't know that these trees are being cutting off. So I'm not agreed to that, and I'm very sad to hear that. Thank you.
My name's Amy Goggins, and I'm a 25-year resident of the Mission, like many in the room. And I oppose the removal of the trees for so many of the reasons that people have articulated and very, have expressed here tonight. But I consider the trees a source of joy. I mean, the benefits are immeasurable, but to me, they're a source of joy and of beauty and truly like feed the soul of the neighborhood. And I think they should be considered a cultural heritage, the same way that we would protect a building or a mural or anything else that defines our neighborhood. And I also think for the trees that must be removed, then we should consider species that look and feel more similar to those trees instead of planting something that feels incongruous and just won't provide the same, the same feel. Thank you.
I feel like we should be talking to each other as well as here. So all due respect, my name is Coyote. I'm from the All in Common Garden on 23rd Street. I volunteered there for a number of years.
Actually, if you
really,
could turn, but if you could speak just so the microphone.
Yeah, I really appreciate what everyone has said. The Mission neighborhood has already been clear cut for the last 15, 20 years. The neighborhood that I have seen is slowly disappearing. It's so wonderful to see folks that I know come to show up for this, so thank you all. Very briefly, how long has it been since we had trees and sidewalks that we can't figure out how to build sidewalks in tandem with allowing trees to grow instead of just cutting them? As far as our pictures show, the photographs of the trees, trees, they have branches that die. I'm sorry. They have branches that die, and that's how it is. And so prune them. The one specific problem that the forester spoke about was they have two major, stems that branch off. Okay, cut the one, let the other one live. I really have to say, what has done more damage in that neighborhood, cars and traffic or trees? Trees actually are a machine to create oxygen for us to live. So I kind of prefer to have trees instead of cars. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sasha Konings, progressing earth science major in music. I had a few thoughts. I was wondering if it really would be less cost-effective to deal with the immediate ficus issues instead of just fixing the sidewalk, at the time that it actually has an issue. Instead of, let's say I read that it costs $20 per tree and we're planting 52 trees, that would be $1,050 for something that the residents have not even complained about themselves. This is, I think they would notice. Also, just the stress of construction or removal would be really hard for people. We talked about how there would be less shade. Homeless people are going to deal with that first, and that is just a very big issue that we need to talk about. So also, I've seen a lot of root rot and a lot of issues with trees in general, especially in Golden Gate Park, and this is just a general issue with the horticulture department of the city. It's failing. I think we should do a soil test, or we should just have more pruning and more attention to these trees, because the fact that they have so many problems is not because of the species, it's because of the treatment. The Japanese maple has root rot. That's one of the side effects of them. So if you guys are planning on doing that, that's another thing that's going to be an issue in another 50 years. The mission's been through too much. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carlos Sandoval. I was born in General Hospital. I live across General Hospital, and Potrero Avenue was one of the first streets that started getting ficuses cut off, and it sucked because not only were they cutting the ficuses, they were also doing the insane road repair that lasted 5-7 years, and then they started fixing it up again a few years ago. The trees have existed for such a long time, and they've provided us so many memories. They're part of our history. They're in photos. You can see all the stages of their growth, and I think we owe it to the trees to preserve them. And all these facts that you're throwing out at us just sound so whack, and it's not convincing because, and I don't think it's because I don't want to believe it. It just doesn't sound true because it probably isn't true. So just really think about what you guys are doing to a community that's struggling to survive, that's never had that relief of not having to worry about the problems they've been dealing with the last 20, 30 years. When I come home, when I'm on my way from downtown or from the beach or from Twin Peaks or anywhere that's not 24th Street, I feel so much relief when I see the green canopies, because I know I'm almost home. And I only have a couple blocks to go, but I used to get that from Potrero Avenue, and I don't get that anymore. And so 24th, I can cut on 21st, I can go down 22nd, but I know I want to go down 24th and walk the 2 extra blocks because I want to see those canopies. I want to see the green. I want to see who's hanging out underneath the trees in the shade. Come on. So help us out.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Once you have spoken, can you please take your seats again? And that doorway needs to be cleared. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben Shiner, a lifelong resident of San Francisco and the Mission. I'm here more to talk about DPW. Last year, I did an internship with an organization. It doesn't really matter. There's a point to this. Basically, DPW has sort of put this image out into the world that they serve corporate America. And I don't think that an organization that is funded by San Francisco and should have that image put out. Every DPW project that I've come into contact with or seen is the people are not down with it. The people who live around the projects are not down with it. The DPW, when you go talk to homeless people about how they're treated by DPW workers, it is not a good story. It's not something we like to hear. Is this doing this to this trees, is that really what you want DPW to show to the world? Is that really what you want the Department of Public Works to have as its legacy, as you and your legacy really, as you are the spearheads of DPW? Like, is that really what you want as your legacy? Like, you already got shit. Everybody already knows DPW doesn't give a fuck about the homeless. Like, everybody. You really want DPW doesn't care about the trees too? Like, is that really what you want? Like, fuck.
I first want to start by saying thank you to Chris for the very thorough and thoughtful presentation, and thank you for hearing all of the community and our concerns today. My name is Melissa Moore, and I'm here as a daily walker along 24th Street going to and from work, and I do oppose the removal of all 52 trees. So we've heard today many benefits of these trees, that they reduce air pollution, absorb stormwater, and are habitat to the songbirds. We also know that they strengthen urban communities because more trees foster stronger relationships amongst neighbors, as we've heard people stop under the trees and talk. And as you've heard today, climate change is a very significant concern for not just our community, but across the world. We actually have a program in San Francisco, the San Francisco Climate and Health Program, which projects that there will be 15 to 40 more days of extreme heat a year. 15 to 40 more days of extreme heat. So shade is going to be incredibly crucial as we, the pedestrians and residents, will need reprieve from the heat. And as you've heard, and we all know and have experienced this, there's not a lot of AC, air conditioning, in San Francisco. And then as Chris mentioned, the small replacement ginkgos and maples will take decades to provide the same benefits we've heard here today. Decades. And once they do get too big, I'm just curious, are they going to be clear cut as well once their roots start bringing up the sidewalks? So an interesting kind of creative solution to this roots in the sidewalks that other cities have experimented with is permeable sidewalks, which is probably a lot cheaper than clear cutting trees and replacing them and then maintaining them. Because if these trees are going to be viable, they're going to need to be maintained and watered. And the other benefit of permeable trees is that they will absorb stormwater, which is going to increase with climate change. So I want to echo another really big concern, which is, I just mentioned briefly, but who's going to take care of these trees? Because we've all walked along streets of the city where there are replacement trees and they're just dead sticks, poles in the ground. So who's going to water them? And then the other thing that Public Works states on their website is that they are interested in stemming the decline of the urban forest and reducing greening inequities in different areas of the city. But the message sent by removing more than half of the canopy over 15 blocks in the Mission is not very congruent with that statement. So I think we're just asking here today to really take this decision seriously and to align with the city's equity and environmental and public health priorities to protect green spaces in all of our neighborhoods. So thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Ulysses Espinosa, and I'm also here as a resident and business owner in the Mission for 15 years now. The trees we're talking about today, as we heard, have been there much longer and took root about the same time as our famous Carnival Parade. They have served as a backdrop to Sunday streets, classic car shows, and the Day of the Dead Parade. You can see these trees in murals all over the neighborhood. The trees on 24th Street are not only significant to our community, but also fall within the San Francisco Urban Forestry Ordinance definition of a significant tree, which according to Article 16 of Public Works Code states under Section 810A that any suggestion of significant tree removal consider the size of the tree, its role as wind, sound barrier, and whether the tree is in high traffic areas. And obviously these trees do provide sound barriers, wind barrier, shade, and it's, they make the 24th Street what it is. We know that new trees will not replace the environmental and social benefits of the current established trees. the gentleman here that gave the precision, even he agrees with that. He knows that's true. It's not going to have the same impact, these new trees. All benefits listed on the Public Works website apply to the 24th Street states that they can help manage stormwater, reduce air pollution, sequester carbon, save energy, increase property values, provide wildlife habitat, calm traffic, which is a huge problem on 24th Street, provide a more pleasant pedestrian experience, and benefit human health. Now, coming from a health awareness perspective, this is why I'm here. Removing the trees would erase the 24th Street canopy and part of our community's heritage as well. Please consider how Public Works can minimize drastic alternation to our bustling corridor and the face of our community. We're still here, and we're only asked that you give us the same consideration that you would towards other more well-to-do neighborhoods. I just drove by the Painted Ladies the other day. They are the same trees, and the sidewalks are all screwed up. Now, I highly doubt that those trees are going to come down anytime soon. So, so I hope that, I don't completely disagree with the gentleman, because I know that some trees do fail. But I hope that they consider taking just the most damaged trees, but not all at once. It's just, that's going to be detrimental to 24th Street. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tristan. So it was said that there have been 41 tree failures in the past 10 years. So that's on average about 4 trees a year that fail. And that's 4 out of 7,000 trees. And I think 4 out of 7,000 is a pretty okay number to deal with. I don't really feel at risk of being hit by a falling tree ever in San Francisco. And when they do fall, it's because of a storm. And I think that's pretty regular everywhere with all types of trees, that they lose branches during storms. Some trees don't make it. And I think that as far as the trees that are seeing, as I quote, a decline, I think it would be important, rather than to try to cut down the tree, maybe address why they're declining. So I would say if these were planted 30 years ago, I don't think they have ever had nutrients added to the soil. And somebody also said they've never really been watered. And that's, of course, not a good way for trees to thrive. For a tree to be strong, it needs nutrients and water. And in general, in nature, it's getting these things naturally from the ecosystem. And there's cover crops on the ground, like grass or something, that hold water in it. And there's other things living that leave dung and all sorts of stuff to fertilize the plant. But instead of that, we have piss on the trees and trash and grease and oil. And whenever it does rain, it's washing the oil from the streets, draining into the trees. And of course, that's not healthy for the tree. So I think that's definitely something that we need to think about. And for the trees that are actually having legitimate issues that need to be removed, it can't happen all at once. That sounds like a complete shit show. Imagine how busy 24th Street is already, and then imagine that while they're trying to remove 52 trees and also repair the sidewalks. That will be a complete disruption to the everyday happenings of the community. And it feels like an attack, like on this community specifically. And I really don't think that this is okay.
Thanks for this opportunity to speak today. My name is David Wolf. I live on 25th Street. The Mission has been my home for 30 years. So in my brief time, I'd like to talk about one big thing, the issue of public trust, the city, and our Mission neighborhood. We all share an interest in public safety, No one, least of all our neighborhood's residents, wants to see any harm done to anyone from failed street trees in the Mission. I'd like to suggest, however, that public safety goes beyond legal liability for potential falling tree limbs. Public safety also includes the quality of life of the people in our neighborhoods and for us as a people globally in the face of severe climate change. The generation-old ficus trees of 24th Street are both part of our neighborhood's family and fabric, intrinsic to our quality of life, and possess significant climate-enhancing tree canopy as well. We have an interest in public safety along with the DPW, yet we have deep concerns about how the department intends to act for our safety regarding their tree management plan. So let's talk about trust. It's now widely acknowledged that the Mission suffered from years of neglect by the city. This neglect extended to a lack of care of our street trees throughout the neighborhood and most visibly along 24th Street. The ficus trees that had been planted for their unique combination of strength and beauty were left largely uncared for. Worse, when pruned, many were damaged significantly by DPW's poor pruning practices. Today, we're dealing with harm done not only to the trees, but also to the trust in the city, now sadly diminished in the neighborhood. Despite the department's most recent outreach, it seems there is still a gap between the information shared by the DPW with the neighborhood. Excuse me. Thanks to a Sunshine Ordinance information request, just recently we've learned of the 2017 DPW assessment of tree health made along the 24th Street corridor. This study, called Every Tree San Francisco, recommends that 26% of the ficus trees be removed. While 1 in 4 trees is still a very large number, it's only half the amount currently proposed by DPW for removal, which is now some 50%. That's 1 out of every 2 trees cut down. It's worth mentioning here the department's initial included fully 79% of ficus to be removed, which was then adjusted after a strongly negative public response. Importantly, Every Tree SF report recommends a far greater degree of tree maintenance and many fewer removals than the department's current proposal. Because of this significant disparity in the department's own data, I'd like to request here that no tree removals be made unless and until DPW addresses fully and publicly why their current proposal is at odds with their own 2017 assessment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Santino. I went to school in the Mission and been moving in and out of the city due to gentrification in the last couple years. And it seems like every time I have the privilege to move back, there's something new I gotta worry about. So one of the things that is kind of ridiculous to me that a lot of people have said is like, where are the details? Oh no, they're splitting. Like that's what ficus trees do. You know what I'm saying? So like, need some more guidelines. Where's the data? Where's your notes? Did you really go through and do all that? Also, 4 out of 7,000 a year. How many of those were in the Mission? Also, like, sorry, I don't public speak. We're humans, dog. We put a man on the moon. You can't figure out how to balance out a tree? Like, come on, y'all. It seems like the easy way out is what you are going for. And, you know, that might help your budget, but you're cutting a legacy. 24th Street. I remember walking down, getting my ice cream, being a little kid, going to all the parks and everything, seeing all my ficus trees and being happy. You know what I'm saying? And like, just to imagine these bare streets, sunny, freaking ridiculous. I visited LA. LA sucks. There's no trees there, man. Like, I want to see more details. I don't want to see all these trees cut. And I feel like you guys are just taking the easy way out. I don't know. That's it.
Please clear the doorways. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Oswaldo Cisneros. First of all, thank you for everyone that came before me and said things way more elegantly than I ever could. I'm here because I'm one of the people that was from the Mission, third floor general baby, 2758 Harrison Street, until we got evicted till the rent got too high, you know, and now I laid my roots as a business partner in the Mission. I've been there since I could work. And I don't want to see it all go. And the fact that this is being called a public safety issue is not true. I'm more likely to get shot by the cops or the sheriff for locking my keys out of my car in broad daylight than getting hit by a tree. So the fact that you can't call this a safety issue, it's insulting and it's disrespectful to the real issues going on in the neighborhood. So that's all.
My name is Angie Hernandez, and I was born and raised in San Francisco. I would like to outline all the issues spoken more formally by everyone else when it comes to climate change and all the sources they provided. I didn't come prepared enough to provide enough factual sources, I guess. I just want to address the fact that DPW, you guys are the one doing this. However, why the homeless issue? Like, what are you guys doing about that? What are you guys doing about the fact that there's still like human feces on the streets? Like, where's the cleanup for that if you guys are so concerned about public safety and public health? Also, if you guys are gonna focus on like public safety and public health, can you guys actually address the fact that in the Hunters Point, the naval shipyard still hasn't been cleaned up? I also work near Oak and Fell Street, and I've noticed that the trees in that area get taken care of and cleaned way more than I have ever seen in the Mission District. So you guys should really work on taking care of the trees and watering them, and maybe that'll affect it better, so.
Hello, my name is Floyd Tangeman, and I'm a lifelong resident of the Mission and a lifelong lover of the trees. When I was a child, my mother drew every single tree on 24th Street, and on a nice day, me and my friends like to go sit on a stoop and hang out, preferably one guarded by shade. My point being that these trees are, sorry, I can't read my handwriting, are a mantelpiece source of art, community, love, and life in general. Now, my question to ask you is the problem really that these trees are a dangerous, scary force to be reckoned with, or is the city just too lazy to deal with them properly? Do we really need to add yet another beautiful neighborhood to the seemingly ceaseless, barren, industrial wasteland graveyard? We have the opportunity to be a beacon of light and hope here today in a time where these much-needed resources are so scarcely available. I say we should take the opportunity to save what we have, and if you don't agree with me, I might just tie myself to a tree and get real friendly. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gloria Mazajewski. I am a teacher, a longtime resident of the Mission. I first moved here in '96, right off Hyde Street. And I just came out tonight because Hyde Street is pretty much lined with ficus. And you mentioned that there's plenty of articles about ficus through the city. Yes, there are. And Hyde Street ficus were mentioned in an article in 2014. One fell at Union and Hyde. There's a neighborhood organization in that article that says, well, we'll just pick up the slack where the city can't do the pruning. So, I feel like is the Mission then just going to clear cut 50% of its trees? I love what David Wolf mentioned about public safety. If this is about public safety in a time of climate change right now, the Mission's about to get real hot in there, and it's not okay to do to the community there. And I beg that if any of them have to get taken down, that staggering that process over a long span of time and care be taken. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicolette Beck. I live in the Mission near 24th at 23rd and Bryant. Walk on 24th all the time. The point I want to make really quick is just that these trees in question are mature, large trees, and the replacement trees wouldn't be comparable until we're old. If they're well taken care of, maybe in 30 years they'll provide shade. But yeah, the shade they provide, the size they are, is incredibly important. And mature trees are easily destroyed and can't be brought back. And also climate change. Mature trees store more carbon and capture more carbon. I don't know, they're a treasure. It's very, very important. That's all.
Hi, my name is George. I've been working in the Fillmore all week, like the other gentleman mentioned, where rows of Victorian houses were bulldozed to make way for urban renewal. And kind of feels like that when you take out 52 trees and you replace them with red maple trees, you know, the same kind of trees I see when I visit, you know, Walnut Creek or downtown Palo Alto or something, you know, and it's gonna change the whole look and the whole feel of the street. And I spend a lot of time down there hanging out at my car and grocery shopping, doing my laundry and stuff. So, you know, 52 trees just seems like way more than you guys need to pull out. And I'm here to oppose the removal. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sam. I'm a relative newcomer to the Mission. I still remember my first time walking down 24th Street. I had moved out from Wisconsin where there are a lot of trees. And when everything was changing in my life and I knew that I was going to be moving over there and living there, this is something that I was just immediately enamored. The trees are beautiful. Everyone here, I think it's amazing the breadth and depth of people that are here that share that same sentiment. And that's really important that you get people gathered here from all shapes, sizes, walks of life, different ages, sharing that same sentiment. I think that's a beautiful thing, and we're all here for a reason. The presentation was absolutely wonderful, very informative, so thank you for that. I want to bring up a couple notes from the presentation. So from what I gather, it sounds like there are three main reasons that any of the ficus trees would be removed. One being root failure. Sounds like a pretty big problem, and it sounds like, or it's a very important problem, but it sounds like that is disparate to not affecting most of the trees. Cavity with decay, again, an important problem that would warrant removal, but it, again, is not affecting most of the trees. It sounds like most of the trees that are being chosen to be cut down is due to competing branches. And I think that, and I would argue that competing branches, just having them, from the presentation, there was not a problem of the wood within the branches, but actually just the bark growing into the crevice, causing that to split. I think that is not, and cutting down an entire tree because of that is not a smart decision. It's really a lack of ingenuity about how to solve the problem. And I can help provide that, and I intend to follow up via email or paper with some drawings and designs. My background is, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer, I'm an energy analyst, and I specifically focus on building energy modeling. And I can speak to all the people that have highlighted what removing the trees would do to shading of the buildings. You're talking about direct solar gain going into windows that are not that are very low performing windows because it's very mild climate here. You have a lot of older residents, AC is not installed. Looking at just those factors alone, and I will also follow up for free the building energy modeling data to support this, that looking at this, considering the amount of people that would be injured by trees as opposed to the amount of people that would be injured from heat waves, especially with climate change and rising summer temperatures on the move, I will follow up with that again. It does not seem to make sense. It's a lack of ingenuity. It seems like the cheap way out, especially when all of us here are sharing the sentiment and how beautiful these trees are. Thank you.
I am Angelica, and I am a San Francisco native. Coming from work, we prune our own trees, and we thin our fruit trees, we prune them, and that's how we maintain the health for our trees. if we really want, if the health for these ficus trees are an issue and for public safety, there's other resources and initiatives that we can take to maintain the health or cut a branch off. And we have resources like community in different communities such as Urban Sprouts and Friends of the Urban Forest. I'm pretty sure they're most likely, they would love to help maintain this health, prune these trees. Just outlining everything that everybody had said was amazing, that I don't see these trees getting any nutrients, any water, either way down 24th. Yeah, come on, we could do it. Okay.
Hello, my name is Alicia Lopez. I grew up in the Mission. My family's been in the Mission since the 60s. And I just want to say, right now I'm studying international studies. I focus on the environment. I also do a lot of farming in arboriculture at Alamany Farm. And I just want to say that, just to let everybody know in the room, that I looked at those trees and they didn't look that bad. So I just want to say, like, yes, a lot of those trees, you know, they're growing in weird ways, but that's straight up from the negligence coming from the city. The city said that they were going to take care of those trees a long time ago when they planted them. When you plant a tree, you make that commitment to take care of that tree, right? So I didn't see nobody taking care of those trees, as everybody else has pointed out. And now we're here at the situation where nobody has cared for these trees for 30, 40 years, you know what I mean? So, sorry, getting heated. Yeah, so I go to school really far away. I come back and forth to the city all the time. And I see how much the city has changed. I see how every single time I come home, they close down something. Stores are gone, stores are changed. There's something new, sugar lump, whatever. And so, like, you know, these trees are always something that I can come back to. These trees are always something that I can come back to. And somebody else said it before, these are our ancestors. I've seen these trees growing when Timo's was that little toy store, you know what I mean? I've seen those trees have been growing with me. They've been growing with us. And if you chop them down, that's just another one of those things that we see of ourselves going away. And yeah, I think that a lot of people here can offer the support to fix these trees, and I think that just cutting them down is not going to solve the problem, because what's going to happen is the city going to neglect the trees again, and I really don't like when the city picks and chooses when the mission is important to them. Thank you.
I'd like to say something dedicated to the trees.
Hello, I've been a Mission resident for some time now and lived in a variety of places in and around the Mission. I've seen a lot of changes to the neighborhood, including putting palm trees on Potrero, which I didn't feel like coexisted with the neighborhood vibe as much. It seems like more of an LA thing to put palm trees up, and some of these other trees that are going in do not seem like they will match the aesthetic of the neighborhood. Something I really enjoy is going to Bernal and Potrero and Dolores and looking down in the neighborhood, and you can actually notice that corridor of trees. You see one on Folsom as well. This is something that isn't really around a lot in the neighborhood, and it's something that's super powerful when you look at it from far away. And I think that you'd be taking out a landmark of the neighborhood by taking out those trees specifically. Another issue that I'd like to address with this is the safety issue you guys have talked about. I live higher up in the apartment building, and it gets very, very hot. It's a 100-year-old building. I'm sure most of our buildings here are 100 years old. I actually have to worry about like my cats from the heat from the lack of shade that we have in the building. And I think that if you keep on removing those, the houses are going to get hotter and hotter, and the heat keeps rising up to the apartments that are on the highest levels of the buildings. So you're really putting this public safety in danger by making the area hotter, especially since we are a valley in the neighborhood. So it's just going to continue to rise heat. We know with global warming this is going to continue to happen. So that's really a safety issue that you're going to be presenting by taking out these trees. The liquor store guy down the street from me told me that he really wanted to get rid of the trees because he would get more business from having less tree in front of his place, and I did appreciate that for him. But it also seemed like it's completely taking away the aesthetic and the view of that landscape there. They actually did end up taking out that tree because it did have things that were falling from it. So I do understand both aspects of the argument, but I really do think that this would completely change the neighborhood for the worse, and I'm completely against it. Thanks for your time.
Hi, my name is Josh Klipp. I've lived in San Francisco for 23 years. I'm an attorney, and I've also been planting with Friends of the Urban Forest for the last 9.5 years, and I've probably put about 700 trees in the ground in San Francisco. Just two things. The first is that we know that our Board of Supervisors just passed a climate emergency resolution. And just to get a little wonky for everyone in the room, what that means is that the Department of the Environment is charged with going back and coming up with a new climate action plan. We have a climate action plan, but the reason that we declared an emergency and are requiring them to go back is because everything that we are doing fails to account for all the pollution that we are creating. And furthermore, more specifically, when we're real specific here, the thing that our climate action plan fails to do is sequester carbon. We have the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. We have no dedicated funding for planting trees, and we have just declared a climate emergency because we can't figure out how to sequester enough carbon. Trees sequester carbon. The second thing, and this is, I'm speaking to you, but I'm addressing everybody in the room, is that I'm here every single month fighting for trees. I'm organizing communities. I'm fighting developers who are illegally removing trees. I'm trying to change our street tree laws. I'm lobbying our supervisors. I'm lobbying our city officials. And if anybody in this room would like to join me in that effort to improve the state of our urban canopy, please talk to me.
Hello, my name is Barish Angan. I'm a resident of 24th Street and also a med student. We'll stick to a health angle, but really happy to see all these neighbors who care so much about the trees. So I would just like things to be on some kind of a fair basis of comparison. You know, we talk about the risk of 4 per 7,000 trees falling. What are the risks associated? I guess I'd encourage or hope that the city could carry out some study of what are the health risks and public safety risks associated with removing the trees. As people have mentioned, there's the risk, especially to elders, of overheating. There's the risk of having less filtered air, the pollution, asthma that can trigger. And most importantly, trees are also barriers that protect us from cars. And how often do car crashes happen? I'm sure we can get statistics on that. It doesn't seem to make sense either from a health perspective or financially. What are all the costs associated with all that? And how would that compare to the costs of doing proper maintenance of the trees, as people have suggested? And finally, trees are beautiful living things deserving of our respect and part of us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And again, we need to keep people out of the doorway. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Teresa. I'm not from the Mission, but I was born and raised in San Francisco. And basically, I've noticed a lot of cutting down of trees. Like you said, it happened in the Fillmore. It happened in McLaren Park. It's happening in the Mission now, too. And it's like, we never get an opportunity to decide about this as the members of the communities where this is happening. We just hear about it and get to speak on it on public comment, but we don't actually ever get a deciding factor in it. I hope that we do, I hope that we do, but it kind of seems like we always get told about it after it's happening or once it's already happening. So it's like, that doesn't make sense to me. And like from what we heard this whole time, we just heard so many solutions, right? We heard so many different solutions. Somebody works, is an engineer and wants to fix this. Changing the sidewalk to make it more permeable to the trees and more adaptable. Watering the trees, putting natural fertilizer, pruning and caring for them, which is like what we're supposed to do when they get planted. And if you want to plant new trees, that's great too, but keep the old ones, because cutting down trees is not the only solution to, tree damage, which it doesn't really sound like they're damaged at all. And like she was saying too, like the trees, they don't look that bad. Like we just need to care for them more. And I'm a gardener, so I'm not just like talking out of my neck. But yeah, there's a lot of solutions. So I really hope that you actually, keep these trees, because these trees are a part of our culture, our childhood, and our children's futures. And they're they're our ancestors, so we should care for them like family. And I've never seen one of those trees fall ever, so.
Hi, I'm Diego Gomez. I was born in San Francisco. I used to live in the Mission when I was a kid, but I can't afford to live there anymore. I live in the Tenderloin that has even less trees than the Mission. I know we're talking about the Mission right now, so 24th is, one of the most beautiful streets in San Francisco, and I find it hard to believe that those are the kind of most damaged trees. What if we just started cutting down all the trees from the rich neighborhoods first and then see how they react? But people with money have more options and can make change, so that's probably never gonna happen. So how about you at least let us have trees, since we're already being taxed insanely, but billionaires and tech companies don't get taxed. Maybe if some of the billionaires that lived here were taxed more, we could fly in some giant trees or something. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Micah. First of all, I want to say the only thing that I'm glad about with regards to this decision is that it's united all of these genuine, intelligent, caring members of the community. I've been, for a long time, I've been a low-level service industry worker, and so I understand the need to create jobs, which often factors in these decisions made by cities, whether it be building up massive, ugly condos for rich people, or cutting down trees, or whatever other fucked up shit American cities love to do. And so I can relate, people need jobs, but there is a thing called social progress, and that is often dismissed in the name of economic growth. And what we need to focus on is not just any jobs, is not jobs fucking up our cities, fucking up our country, and fucking up the planet. We need to focus on creating jobs that help people to understand what community is, to learn to take care of trees. We need to put funding into community gardens. If Public Works needs jobs, if construction unions need jobs, have them build low-income housing. Have them plant and nurture trees. Have them learn to work with children. There are so many things that we can do as a nation and as cities to make things better. And too often, we're doing none of them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Simon. I work in House of Color. It's a paint store that is in 24th. And, we have a tree in front of the store, and it's going to be cut down. And, I sweep the leaves that fall every single day. And you know what? I don't have a problem with it. And in fact, I look forward for it because sometimes work can be hard. And that's my relaxing time because I go out, I sweat the leaves, I hear the wind, I hear the birds, and I always think, this is good. It's worth it. And I try to imagine, hearing that news, the ecological impact that it will take for all the micro system that lives in the whole community of trees of the 24th Street. And that's something that the new trees won't solve, not now, not even in 30 years. So I'm really worried about that. And well, watering the trees and giving them some maintenance will probably be even cheaper than cutting them down. And even the community can help with that. You can see the community here is united, so we can work together. Taking the trees out is like taking out the heart of a human being. So please, Public Works, don't take out our hearts. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Cornelia. I'm a Mission resident and I work in the All in Common Garden also, in the Mission at 23rd and Shotwell, so right off 24th Street. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you for being here. I don't know if there's like more of a commission that should have been here that didn't want to show up to this hearing, but thank you for being here, appreciate it. And thank you to whoever presented, and thank you to everyone that spoke before me and for all the wonderful points that have been brought up. I wish that I could echo all of them because I think that just to hear them again and again and really feel the weight of them is important because these trees, more than just like statistics on a piece of paper, obviously have so much meaning. There's the issue of global warming and like people have mentioned the heat and having the trees there for the shade. And also having plants in our lives is incredibly crucial. They've been shown in studies to be incredibly beneficial for mental health, for your physical health, for your spiritual health, for people to have peace of mind. It's a quality of life issue. These trees are our relatives. I mean, part of me wants to just get up here and read the Lorax and speak for the trees because if trees are important. If they could be here, they would be here and speak for themselves, but they can't. So it's up to us to do it. And I really thank everyone who did come out here for that. But also, it's a quality of life issue. And if you look especially in cities where we have to fight really hard for these green spaces, to maintain those places where people can come and have that access to nature, there is inequity there. And this is an issue of environmental racism and environmental injustice. And it is a violent act to clear cut 52 trees off of this street. It is an affront to the community. And I don't know if there was enough community outreach done because I only heard about this from other people in this room. So I think more people would be here to speak up about it if they knew. Was there even, like, how much information was put out in Spanish into the community about this? And all of this is even being held in English. And I'm sorry. It's hard, there's so much I want to say, so little time, and I'm getting worked up about it. But it's not fair that if you look in cities, who has the trees, who doesn't have the trees? Like people have said, this would never happen in a neighborhood where people had wealth and privilege and power and the ability to impact the decisions. And people aren't players in this decision. If this decision is truly already made, as someone said earlier, I mean, if these trees come down after this much output, what are we supposed to think about that? You know, do we even have a say? Do people matter in the mission? I have 7 seconds left, but I also want to talk about the replacement trees. I love maples. I'm from New York. They're beautiful. Can we get community input on what kind of trees get put in there? This is the Calle 24 Latino Cultural District. So maybe like to find some trees that the community could agree on and have put in there would be really wonderful. Thank you so much for this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Arguello. I'm the president of Calle 24 Latino Cultural District. My family has been in the mission since 1928. We've been active for about 25, 30 years in the mission. The last 5 years is when Calle 24 became an official cultural district that was designated by the city. Part of the process for us to become a Calle 24 Latino Culture District was to really do a lot of outreach in the community. We did focus group with businesses, with residents, with youth, with nonprofits, with arts organizations. And one thing that we did was in all of those different groups, we identified those trees being part of our cultural assets to protect, along with our businesses, along with our events, along with our murals, along with our homes. So we really set up ourselves to really protect all our cultural assets, things that make the neighborhood important, and identify who we are in the neighborhood, and those trees are a big part of it. We've seen these attempts to remove these trees 3 times since I can remember, since they were placed, and each time they've stayed for a lot of different reasons. And each time, we've come to these hearings, there's hundreds of people to show up to, fight against the removals. And something have been done in the past to keep them, and I think we can do the same now. I think it's important to retain these trees for a lot of different reasons. Gentrification is just rampant in the neighborhood. People are feeling very vulnerable and unsafe in a lot of different ways. Unsafe because they could be thrown out of their house at any time. Unsafe because they lose their business. And once you do a drastic change like that, it's just really going to increase that fear and uncertainty for a lot of folks in the neighborhood. These trees are part of our identity, and I think we should do everything we can to protect them, to preserve them, how many we can save, or if not all of them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sasha Hippard. I am a 5th generation San Franciscan. And I think it's really clear from the testimony that we've heard today that these trees are more than just an aesthetic greenery. These trees really represent like the resilience and the strength and the beauty of our community. I would really like to remind the department and everyone in this room that we just got out of a drought. We cannot afford, neither economically nor environmentally, to take care properly of new growth, new saplings, let alone we're not able to take care of the full-grown trees that we have available to us. I, as a lifelong resident, as a voter, and as a taxpayer, I can think of no greater waste of our resources than to destroy something that really epitomizes and makes a community feel like home. It's the thing that makes 24th Street feel hospitable, like a place that you want to stay and linger and enjoy. And to replace that with basically the same but lesser, something new. And with all due respect to the person who gave the presentation, this 3-month turnaround is ludicrous. I have watched countless trees, I've watched dozens of trees be removed, very few be replaced. Just this last month on Cap and 24th, we saw a perfectly good space where there used to be a big, vibrant ficus tree get cemented over. And I think that it's just an absolute waste of our time, an absolute waste of our resources, and should be completely canceled. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Raitan, and I've been a Mission resident for 15 years. And I am here today because I walk down 24th Street with my children often. And when there are notices put up saying that there's going to be removal of something that is, I feel, integral to our community, it's just pain. And the pain is not just for me and my children and for all of these people in this room, but the pain is for living, breathing beings And I want that to be very clear. These are living, breathing beings, and they shade us, and they give us oxygen. And we are about to witness what is considered by many a decision that has already been made to murder these living, breathing beings. And we have an opportunity right now, at this time, to think about what we're doing and stop what might very well happen. And I feel strange standing here because I'm a member of a community speaking to a member of my community, but there's this wall and this microphone, and there's a division between a city and a city's people. And I think that division should not be. The city is its people, and the people are speaking, and the city needs to listen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lucas Courtney. I'm a San Francisco resident and born and raised here my whole life. These trees were here before me, and I hope to see these trees be here long after me. The city has gentrified the Mission so hard, and I don't want to see these trees gone and be gentrified as well. Please keep these trees here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maxon Turner. I don't have much to say, but I want to thank everybody for coming out here and fighting for these trees to keep them here and to save them. I'm born and raised in the city, and I've grown up around the Mission area. I've been there my whole life and been there and just enjoyed that area with these trees. And I've seen a lot of gentrification happen to this area, and I believe that if these trees do get removed, it's going to create a lot more opportunity for gentrification to continue, just being that these trees are being removed. And other than that, the emotional bounds that these trees hold is really important. And I feel like that's why everybody is here, just because of the beauty of these trees, and everybody wants to see them stay here. So I would really like to see the city and everybody that is fighting for these trees to really put in an effort to care for these trees going forward. And that means watering them correctly, feeding them correctly, seeing that they get proper light and that they pick the right trees that are going to work in this area. And I think that's going to be the most important thing, is picking these trees and caring for them and caring for the ones that are already there now and keeping the ones that are there now, and also adding in new life. And that includes trees and different kinds of plants and just proper care for whatever is going to go into this area. And yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, family. Thank you for being here on behalf of the family that we're supporting, our trees. They're part of our family, too. I am really depressed about this fact that you, sitting up there, are going to represent us and make a recommendation of how this crowd behaved. And I hope that you clearly represent us correctly. Those are living works of art. And I would appreciate you saying so and telling them how much they mean to us. I am really fearful that the visitor that spoke earlier today is correct. Those trees are being removed because they want to put down wiring, G5 wiring, to make our community into a high-tech community, to bring more gentrification into our neighborhood. I'm afraid that that visitor is right. The canopy of trees will prevent that from happening. I want the canopy of trees to stay. They belong to us. They are part of us. We need them. You need them. And you should fight for them too.
Hello, my name is Hold, and I'm an international student at CCSF. If you can, please vote for Free City in November. Just a reminder for everyone. I moved here from Sweden. Anytime I tell someone in the US that I am from Sweden, they go, "Whoa, that's such a progressive space to live in. Why are you here?" Okay, there are reasons why I'm here, but that's beside the point. In Sweden, I live in the second largest city. It's a really urban area. And still in the most like downtowny areas, you will see some greenery around. You will find it. You take the tram 10 minutes and you will find something to sit next to and feel good. Take it easy. Even in the areas in my hometown that aren't really taken care of by the city, the low income, the black and brown majority neighborhoods, there is greenery even there. Just again to push on how important it is that the trees are here for children. It's gonna take a long while for the new trees to grow. There's nothing that can replace a life of a tree. Let's look at the root causes of why the roots are moldy, okay? Instead of trying to appease those who have money. I think appease is the right word in English. I don't know. Thank you for sitting here and looking at everyone throughout this really long time. And I also really want to add that it seems it's really disrespectful to me when the community comes out. There's so much else to do. There's so much else to do to take care of when you live in San Francisco. Like people have shared, they grew up here and they cannot live here because of how things are happening because of gentrification. They could be making money, which is really important in the city. They could be looking at a Warriors game. So, I mean, I don't know. I hope the council is out having a great time, not having to worry about making money, while the community is pouring their heart out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natalie Down, and I don't think there's anything I can say that hasn't already been said better. But I'd just like to reiterate that it's incredibly important that in this time of a climate emergency that we not only look after the trees that we have, but make way in the budget for planting of new trees and for maintaining and for watering these new trees that get planted when they do indeed get planted, and to do that kind of citywide. It's amazing to see so many people out here from the 24th Street Mission area. I'm from Hayes Valley, obviously British born and bred, but I live here now, and I think it's essential to me that the city looks after its habitats, its ecosystem, as well as its people. San Francisco is part of the Great Pacific Flyway. We have about 350 species of birds that either live in or fly through San Francisco as one of the largest, most important estuaries on the West Coast. The planting of a tree isn't just the planting of a plant. It can't be dealt with like a plant and removed just immediately in that same way. You're planting an ecosystem, and we need to maintain it as such. And I just want, to reiterate that and say how important trees are to the neighborhood and also to the city. Thank you, and the environment.
Is there anyone else who has not spoken who would like to speak? If that is not the case, yes?
Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth. I was born and raised in the Mission. And one of my earliest memories in life was being taught the importance of caring of our trees. I went to school to Cesar Chavez Elementary School in Shotwell, and I clearly remember our teachers telling us that it's important to love our trees because they are a part of our community, they're a part of us. And I clearly remember my elementary school self hugging a tree, having my face against their trunk and just being so happy. And because of that, I feel like growing up, I've always gravitated to trees. And throughout my lifespan, I'm only 18 by the way, I've seen so many changes, not only in my community, but in our earth, in our planet. If it's not droughts, if it's not seeing my neighborhood becoming something unrecognizable, it's seeing the fear and the anxiety in my family of maybe not being able to afford to stay in San Francisco. And there's a lot of things that I knew were gonna change in the city, especially in my community in the Mission, whether it's seeing, businesses that I love going to like slowly start going away, or people that I love having to move East Bay or not even in the Bay Area in general. But one thing that I thought I would always see or stay in our community were these trees. And now that they're at risk of being removed and possibly not even, replaced, saddens me just because there has been so much love that has gone into our community, and I know there's so much love that go into these trees. So everybody today brought so many solutions, and I just want you guys to take recognition in that and possibly do everything else except remove these trees. Also, I feel like just like our trees in our community, just like these trees, our community has gone through so many unexpected, unexpected challenges. And there's this one quote that I feel really speaks to me right now, which is, they buried us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And just like our community, just like our trees, we are still standing, we're still here, and we will fight back. And we're not going anywhere.
My name is Georgia Wrightan. I was born in the place that I live now. And I've seen so many trees in front of my house get cut down. And new ones planted, and they're so small, and it seems like they kind of want to uproot everything that's been there and put in something new, like at least 3/4 of all the family-owned businesses in my neighborhood are gone. And I just don't want to see the roots of this community torn out and thrown aside like a piece of garbage. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak?
I have a question. Can you explain how this decision is going to be made?
I'll
How the
go over that.
testimonies are
I'll do that in a second. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak who hasn't had a chance? Okay, if that's the case, then the department can come back if you want to address any of the things that were mentioned or answer any questions.
Good evening, Chris Buck with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. I just want to say it's a profound response from the community. I want to thank everyone for being incredibly respectful to me as a professional. I'm touched by that respect, despite the fact that this is a really difficult situation. So I can't, just show you enough how much I respect that. There's no doubt this is an incredible turnout. And we do apologize for the delay at the start of the hearing. We know it's not easy to get all the way here on time. For sure, the city will listen, and the city does listen. Decision's not been made yet, so I do want to make that clear. But really, again, after that profound response from the community, clarifying anything at this point, it just seems tone deaf. But I don't have anything to correct at this point.
Okay. Actually, I had a couple of questions which were raised. So you said that after the trees will be taken out, you said there were a number of unplantable basins. Do you know how many of those there were?
I have it in our spreadsheet, so I can look at that. But and someone mentioned to it, there are trees that we can't replant where we have paved over some of those basins. And then if they're replantable, we've been replanting those. So there are a certain number of basins that are not replantable. I have them. We can provide that.
Okay. And about dealing with watering, what's the department's protocol for watering?
So watering, it was one thing I wasn't going to get in.
Versus established plants.
Sure. So watering is required for the first 3 years. So the good news is all the trees that are planted as street trees in the Bay Area require watering once a week for 3 years. And at about that point, they become established. So there's no additional water required. Also, no additional nutrients typically required. The exception would be palm trees, but we don't, other than the Embarcadero, those are the only trees we provide nutrients for. So the watering, there is funding for the establishment, protection of replacement trees, and watering. There is that. I skimmed over that screen or that page, but absolutely there's dedicated funding to plant and water and maintain the replacement trees. So I know it's tough when our agency or department initiates the removal of trees. We are the same agency that did get these established. Certainly my predecessors, along with the Chinese elm trees along Folsom that you can see from the top of Bernal. So we're the same agency that's established some of these iconic boulevards and thoroughfares. So we certainly are committed to watering and maintaining.
Okay, and what was the other thing? Oh, I know a new tree is not going to replace an established tree in terms of all the benefits. Is there any, at what point do you see a new tree start to be able to provide some reasonable amount of benefit?
Sure, it comes across as pretty petty to talk about how soon, from my personal perspective, we're talking for the maples at least 10 years before you feel like, hey, this is starting to provide a reasonable amount of shade. This feels a little bit like the canopy is recovering. It's going to be a while. So there's some trees planted near 2889 that were planted about 6-7 years ago. They're red maples, but it's a tough comparison. Without a doubt, there's an impact. And even if they get a certain size or width, it still doesn't create the complexity that the older trees provide from habitat and other perspectives. So we agree, and clearly the community here heard that we understand the replacement is going to take some time. Not some time, a decent amount of time.
Okay, and I know at the beginning you were starting to go over, each tree, and people were encouraging us to move forward. But there were a couple questions people wanted to know, get information from the database, condition of each tree. How can they do that?
Sure, we can provide that. We have, the database is publicly available, and not all the information in the database is, you can't just click and get it all. There have been various records requests, but we can figure out a way to make it more available, along with our evaluation sheets of each tree. So that's something we can provide and make available.
Okay. I want to remind people that if they want to get information about what happens, make sure you sign the sign-up sheet, because that's how the department will disseminate, one of the ways the department will disseminate information. Just as a reminder, the process is, if there are seeing that there are no more speakers on this item, I'll close this item. I'm only making a recommendation. I will make my recommendations to the director within 10 days. When the director's determination is made, the department will notify the people who've signed up. That is all we have today. So with that, I will close the hearing and thank everyone for turning up.